Please welcome to the stage MSNBC Chief Correspondent and Citizen Board Member Ali Velshi, with Deborah Winger, actor, activist, and member of the board of American Promise, along with Jeff Clements, CEO of American Promise.
Deborah, Jeff, you take that one? Oh, they want you here, yeah. Come on over there. Hi again, everybody. All right. This was the conversation I promised you this morning. We're going to talk about campaign finance. And I have to say, my mind's a little blown because even this morning you heard me exclaiming that what we think of as broken campaign finance, and I think there's probably, my guests can tell me more about this, but I think there's probably broad agreement in this country that something seems to be broken with the way we finance our elections. And we do it in an unusual way for democracies. But my mind's kind of blown by how this one went. The stuff that was out there, the inundation of ads, the amount of money that was spent. And I was just talking to Jeff and Deborah about that, tell me what's different about this. And Deborah, you were very interesting. You were telling me not only is it not that different, but it kind of just underscores the point that you've been trying to make for a long time about campaign finance reform. This is not a different thing. This is just the manifestation of all the things that you have been working on. Yeah,
I mean, hi, happy to be here. Nice to see all of you. The point is not different. The money will just keep squaring and squaring and squaring. But I think, and we haven't been trying to get this point across. We've been working steadily knowing this point was coming. So in a way, I guess the only thing I ever learned in my career life was the best thing you can do is be ready. You know, you can't always guess what the job will be or what's going to come at you or what the conditions will be, but you can be ready for what you want. And you know, when I met Jeff 10 years ago, or more than that now, it was sounding like something that was in the future. It certainly didn't, it wasn't like, oh, we're going to go out and get this done this year.
Right.
So, and Jeff can tell you more about that build up to when the moment would be that we would be bringing this.
Yeah.
So many forces have to come together to have something happen in this country. And usually by the time the thing happens, it's too late. You know, the forces have already come together.
Right.
So you can either walk around sort of shocked and shell-shocked, or you can start to do something, or in our case, move forward with.
So that's the theme. I mean, that's, I think, why everybody who's here is here, because these are people who are deciding they want to do things and have been for some time. Jeff, before we talk about what this thing is that you're doing, let's go back 10 years and talk about Citizens United, which sounds to some people like something that was in the past. But talk to me about, now that we've got 10 years of history, what Citizens United did to lead us to the moment that we're in.
Yeah, thanks, Ali, and hello, everyone. So my background's in the law. I actually did a brief in the Supreme Court in the Citizens United case. And the issues in that case were whether essentially the American people have the power to enact laws to prevent what we're now seeing today, which is more than a campaign finance problem. It's a constitutional crisis of oligarchy, plutocracy, choose your word, but it's a massive concentration of power because money is power as much as it is speech. And so in the Citizens United case now, 12 years ago, the Supreme Court struck down the Bipartisan Campaign Reform Act, known as McCain-Feingold at the time, overturning a Supreme Court case that had upheld the Bipartisan Campaign Reform Act only 7 years before. So Americans had actually regulated money in politics since the Civil War. Not always perfectly, but the idea that we did not have the authority as citizens, or that our representatives did not have the authority to check the power of concentrated money in the political system is alien to the American system. I think it's alien to any democratic society system because it doesn't work, and that's what we're seeing now. So the Citizens United decision, I think, really, as people said at the time, open the door, unless that decision is overturned, for it to get catastrophically worse. And believe it or not, it will get catastrophically worse from here. So we now have, 5 billionaires can put $700 million into a campaign. We have you guys here in Pennsylvania know better than anybody, after $315 million Senate race, most of that money is coming from a handful of people.
Right.
And so that is only beginning, and there's no check on it because it's considered free speech by the Supreme Court. And so unless we do a constitutional change, this is the future, getting worse and worse in this way. And so that is why we built the thing that we're going to talk about.
And I'm still one question away from talking about the thing, because I want to ask you, Deborah, one of the things that you said about this election, because my take until half an hour ago was that, wow, this is exponentially worse and a setback in terms of the money. And your take was that actually it has exposed the thing that you've wanted to get people thinking about for so long in a way that has taken it out of the abstract. Dark money as a concept is still an abstraction to some people. The way it went in this election is not an abstraction. You saw the money and the power at work, and you even saw the linkages between, if this person wins, this person who has been very overt about in their spending about this person benefits in a very tangible way.
Yeah, I don't think there was ever any blush on a rose, but if there was, it's off.
Yeah.
It was, I guess at the risk of giving up my jaded status, which I really refuse to give up. I'm not Pollyanna, but I'm feeling a bit Pollyanna in this moment because I feel like it's been so hard to convince some people that this is true. And now we can just put that aside.
Right.
We can carry on with the work that we have been doing and need to do now because we don't have to use terms. I mean, it's true that there's still dark money, and Jeff will speak to it. We don't really know what that term means. We know Elon Musk now. We know that this person, and they were proud of it. So
yes.
I think that that's a meaningful thing, that nobody was skulking around or is trying to hide it. So we've reached a new intersection, an important intersection that we can take forward in a positive way, honestly.
Yeah, it has taken the cloak off, right? That Elon Musk has benefits from tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles. He benefits from being at the table in the government with respect to Starlink, benefits.
Right. And yet everybody knows that Kamala raised more money.
Right.
So, and I think that Jeff...
That came up this morning, that she raised 3 times
That's right.
the money, $1.2 billion versus $375 million. Tell me about that for a second,
Right,
Jeff?
but Jeff is an important person to talk to about how she raised that money.
Thanks, Deborah. That's why she's on our board. My friend this morning referred to $300+ million as Donald Trump's campaign raised, which is true, and it is true that Kamala Harris's campaign raised over $1 billion. What was missing from that was the money that is coming in now because of Citizens United, which is the so-called outside money. So there is another $700 million, which wasn't referred to, that the Trump campaign received the benefit of through the super PACs. And that was where the Elon money went, and it's where 5 other billionaires put in $700 million. Now, that doesn't, if you're feeling righteous about that, if you're a Democrat, the Democrats have lots of billionaires too, and in some ways it's harder to find them because they run a lot of that money through Future Forward and other super PACs that use C4s to hide their donors. But there's just no question that the system now, as Deborah's alluding to, and as you said, that this notion is getting normalized, that billionaires not only spending massive amounts of money, but literally buying policy and then showing up to implement it with more money.
It's wild, yeah. The actual direct link to the implementation is clarifying. Let's put it that way. Okay, Deborah, it's time for the it. This is not an abstract conversation about campaign finance being out of control. You have a plan. There is a very specific thing that you would like to do, and that thing is a constitutional amendment. which is going to get, we need a little oohing and ahhing here, because that's not a common thing, and it's these days. Yeah. It has not been something we do all that often.
Well, it's not that, I wouldn't use the word, I wouldn't say it's uncommon, it's just not necessary often.
Right.
But when it becomes necessary, there's nothing else that will do. And that's where we're at.
So talk to me about this.
Well, I mean, I will direct you to Jeff, who speaks much more eloquently from a constitutional point of view. As a citizen, which is how I come to this, and I hope, if anything else, what this election can help to start to annihilate is the celebrity culture that just, eats us up at every turn. And I think
present company excluded.
No, I think that anybody that knows
you are
me
Deborah Winger.
and my thing, they will say that I have always felt this way. For 40 years, I have not liked it. I've never bought into it. It was my least favorite part about being an actor. It's like, why do I have to do that part? So I think that, we're dealing with a twofold thing. But to stay on point, there are times in America's history when constitutional amendments happened. They happen in clusters. They happen about every 50 years. We're overdue. This baby is late. They come, we probably are looking at something about term limits as well, but they come in a time after strife, after civil unrest, after a pandemic, as the turn of the century. And I would like Jeff to speak about this just because he's more eloquent than I am, but it's a part of the structure that the Founding Fathers, thought of already. This is a living organism, our Constitution. It was not meant to be etched in a stone pillar and displayed at schools. But it's, okay, there's a few people that got that. So anyway, Jeff, you speak more to the idea of a constitutional amendment.
I first will say I'm not more eloquent than you, Deborah, but second, look, this isn't abstract or strange. I mean, constitutional amendments are what Americans do. We've always done it. But we've done it, as Deborah said, in particular moments of crisis for the country. So we did 10 right after the revolution, of course. We call it the Bill of Rights. That was not proposed from the top down. Those were amendments, 2/3 of Congress ratified by 3/4 of the states because the people insisted on that. We did 3 amendments in the Civil War that was discussed so interestingly this morning about in that very divided era where the wheels were coming off again. We did 3 amendments. 1910 to 1920, a terribly difficult time for the country. War, pandemic, economic crisis, you name it. We did 4 constitutional amendments. 4 constitutional amendments between 1961 and 1971, another very challenging time for the country. So from our perspective, the model of American promise is Americans will want to amend the Constitution to fix this problem because there isn't another fix. It's a constitutional question posed to all of us. Is it free speech to spend unlimited money and we're not allowed to do anything about it? Or do we have the right to protect our own free speech, our own representation, our own integrity as a democracy, our vote? And if we do, we need to amend the Constitution. Just like when we decided women will vote, we're going to elect senators, we're going to end slavery. Those were all amendments. That's what Americans do. And so the question for all of us as citizens is, are we in one of those times, A, when we need it, to Deborah's point, it's necessary, and B, where something that was once, as my friend Jamie Raskin says, impossible becomes inevitable. Right. Because it is so necessary, matching to the moment in American history when Americans want to get it done. So that's what American Promise is built for. We're not going to do it. Our job is to serve you in this room and Americans around the country to mobilize the kind of citizen power that amends the Constitution. And that's exactly what's happening. So for us, who've been out there for now 6-7 years around the country, we're actually very optimistic. We see, 22 states have formally backed it. We passed the Pennsylvania House last year. Pennsylvania could be, Pennsylvania, all right.
Could be next.
And so Pennsylvania could be the 23rd state to say, we, the people of the Commonwealth, I'm from Massachusetts, I like the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, demand that Congress get off its you-know-what and pass the For Our Freedom Amendment. It fits on a napkin, so this is not complicated. It's like most constitutional language, really powerful, really clear. We have napkins if you'd like, or check out For Our Freedom Amendment at AmericanPromise.net.
Just give us a cocktail, we'll get it.
And so we can fix this. Pennsylvania can be the first state after the election, but you have to hurry because Wisconsin, Utah, Wyoming, Texas are all in play. But this is a real thing. It really is. And the only way it happens, like all other amendments, is when the citizenry decides it must happen. And then we have work to do. And that's, we embrace that. And we have been so gratified to see Republicans, Democrats, Independents, doesn't matter. They love this when they hear about it, and they want to be involved.
Yeah, talk about something we can agree on. Because I've had the opportunity being involved with American Promise to do things I may never have done, like have dinner with a Republican or... No, I've had lots of dinner with Republicans. But often I find myself in a conversation and I'm looking for a metaphor or I'm a very conceptual thinker. So I'm always trying to picture, what does this feel like? What does this feel like? And I don't like the religious implication, but it does feel like we need to come together to go through a very narrow place that we agree on, to get back out to that big open place that is America where we can all disagree about things that don't affect our health and our livelihood so much. So, they're just opinions. So I have had great pleasure in the last, decade finding this out. And it's not just a nice thing to say on the campaign trail, like, that we're alike. We really do have the numbers to prove that we agree on this.
Let's talk about that, Jeff, because we agree on very little these days, it seems. Tell me about what your research indicates and what your experience has been with this cross-partisan support for this, and why.
So, the polling, I can give you polls all day long. It's about 90% of Americans see money in politics as a threat to democracy, not a problem, not a policy problem, a threat to the democracy itself. About 80% support a constitutional amendment. I think in that there's probably another 15% that will support it when they learn more about it, but 80% are ready to do that. But take it out of the polls, because you know what polls can do, and just see what the people do when they get a chance to vote on this. So we've won 7 ballot initiatives. Those 22 states, 7 of those were by ballot initiative. And we've never lost. We have modest amounts of money. This is not like a big money sort of winning ballot initiatives. It's getting the people to do it. And then in Maine, which was our most recent one, the most recent state to get it across the finish line, it was the vote of 86%.
Wow.
The 2nd district in Maine went with Donald Trump this election. It's quite conservative. They just had a $50 million House race. It's still up in the air. Jared Golden may win that, but it's very close. It's still being counted. $50 million in a rural House district where the last election before Citizens United in that district, $800,000.
Right.
So it's now $50 million. So that gets to your why. Like, why does 86% of Maine do this? Why are Republicans voting for this every chance they get? They are experiencing the same thing that Democrats are experiencing, which is the power of outside money. That $50 million in the 2nd district of Maine, almost nobody from Maine is counted among that. It's coming from the same concentrated group of very wealthy donors.
It's incredibly insulting, besides the fact that it should be illegal, but it's incredibly insulting to...
That amount of power is being wielded in your own thing. So,
and that people can come from
anywhere they
want.
want.
Know anything about your well-being for your state, what your state needs, what your public health issues are, nothing.
Yeah, so I'm going to in a minute go out to ask you some questions for a few minutes, but Deborah, one of the things I asked you earlier was, because we're so far removed from normalcy in terms of election rules, whether it's term limits or proper spending rules, how do we get people back to thinking about what it was? And you responded by saying, we don't have to get people back, that it's our natural state is to understand that democracy is about debates, your vote, policy discussions, not this. We're not in a natural state at the moment. You actually feel very encouraged that people this will resonate with you.
Yeah, I feel optimistic in that it's like a resonant thing because however differently we were brought up, whatever our politics are, really, we have to look for the resonant issues as Americans. I mean, we learn at the first turn in elementary school that the definition of democracy is one person, one vote. That's inside of us, and we have the feeling now that when we're walking in, yes, we're voting, and yes, they're counting the votes, but there's so many other things at play. And so, yeah, I believe that this will resonate. It does resonate. I bet that as you're sitting here, you can tell us the different ways that it resonates with you. But we have obviously been out in these states, people from, really, it's a cliche, but all walks of life, all politics. They don't even have to hear very much about it. There's people that are strategizing as to how it can work, but not whether we need it or not.
Interesting. Shall we ask our fellow participants here to engage in the conversation with us?
Let's get some questions going with two caveats: no filibustering, and no questions about whether if either one of our guests ever might have kissed Richard Gere. I think Allie, that might be Jeff, yeah. And by the way, I love that cocktail, that napkin. In fact, we want to start distributing those throughout Philadelphia.
Excellent.
Say who you are.
Linda Kronfeld. So maybe this is stated in your materials, which I haven't read, but are you suggesting certain financial standards at different race levels? Will there be caps? I mean, of course it costs money to, run for whatever political office. So,
Great question, Linda, right? Yeah, great question, Linda, thanks. So the beauty of the amendment is, and like most constitutional language, it's about rights, power, checks and balances. It's not about policy. The last amendment that tried policy was prohibition, and it didn't work that well. So we needed another amendment to fix that. So this really just gives us, we the people, the authority to answer those questions. And so what it does is allows Congress to put limits in federal elections. So that would, I think, almost immediately what would happen, even as the amendment is getting closer, those laws will start getting back into place. We used to have limits on PACs. There was no such thing as a super PAC. Not that long ago, before Citizens United, there was a $5,000 limit on PACs. And the super PAC was illegal. Most of what we see today was a violation of law that Americans wanted. That would go back into place. So that you don't need an amendment for that. We need the amendment to let Americans do what we want to do, which is limitations. What those are, and same with the states. This puts, for state elections, this will put it back to you in Pennsylvania to decide, what do you want for your election system? And you'll have the power to do it and the ability to do it. And based on American history, I'm confident Americans will do it. Now, will Wyoming do the same thing as Pennsylvania? Probably not. But that's okay. That's America. So the amendment is pretty simple, and we at American Promise won't tell you what to do or what to think about it. The reason we can hold most Americans together to get this done is this is America. We'll have lots of different views and debate about what the right level is for a limit, or what corporations or unions, if any, should be allowed to do in spending. We are agnostic about that. We want Americans to decide those questions, and we're confident that Americans will do a good job. But we also need to answer this 50 years from now, 100 years from now. We need to deal with AI that nobody was even thinking of a decade ago. We don't know what money even looks like, in 100 years. We have to fix this not just for ourselves, but for our children and grandchildren, give them the tool to deal with complex issues of money, power, freedom. So that's what the amendment's about.
Just one follow-up. So let's just talk about the here and now. I mean, $1 billion is one presidential
Wait, sorry. Let's get this real quick and make it quick. We're not supposed to do follow-ups.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, you'll get a detention.
Okay. I'm leaving after this, so don't worry. What do you think is a reasonable amount to spend on a president? I'm asking you personally.
I'm only chuckling. It's a great question. I wish I actually knew in this, but what I learned as a lawyer a long time ago is like 12 people in a jury box will get a better decision than me every time. And so 300 million people will get a much better decision than me. But what I know is it will not look like this. We will have limits. I want limits. As a voter, as a citizen, I would say we ought to limit the amount of money you can give to PACs. I would
So
say.
you've talked about other countries that have, there are formulas all over the place. Right? Some places say this much per registered voter, or this much per voter who was enumerated last time. In other words, there's a lot of ways to get to it that aren't an amount per campaign, but they're absolutely something you can calculate. Is that
absolutely?
What you would
and
imagine?
if we wanted
Per
to,
state.
if we wanted to limit the total campaign spending, we could do that after the amendment. That's what we used to do, and the Supreme Court struck that down in a case well before Citizens United, saying we can't limit campaigns. But I think limits make sense because it's the only way to protect the equal rights of all people, including those without money, to participate effectively, and it's the only way to check and balance the power of money in the political system, where money is not supposed to be the currency, it's supposed to be the citizen. So I'm not trying to be dodgy about the question. There are many different ways of getting there, and our thinking and our work, it's the only thing we do. There's no sort of bait and switch here. We don't have any other work except helping Americans amend the Constitution to do this. So that's why I do need to speak as president of American Promise, or CEO of American Promise. Our president's here too. Anastasia, where are you? Raise your hand. There she is. So you can talk to her too.
I have a couple other jobs, but
we all have a lot of different views in this country about exactly the best way to get those limits or get the place we want. So that's why I'm answering it that way.
Got another question.
Yeah, we got to limit the money. No
Got another question over here. Say your name.
Mari Gonzalez. So my question is, in speaking about like other countries, and this is more of a curiosity, have you thought about limiting the time people can campaign? I wonder if that's also another way to limit kind of how much resources are used, or who can even run for office based on resources.
Yeah, no, I think we lose a lot of good people. I know our polling shows Americans think we lose a lot of good people who could run for office if it wasn't dominated by billionaires and big money. And to your question, some countries do have brief campaign seasons, right? That would be struck down if we didn't amend the Constitution. That would violate, quote unquote, the free speech of some people, corporations, unions, even foreign government-owned corporations are now spending money in U.S. elections, saying they have a free speech right. And so if we tried to, say you can't start campaigns until any date, the Supreme Court would strike it down under the same theory of Citizens United. And that's the constitutional debate, is we disagree. We think if that's what Americans wanted to do, it doesn't violate anyone's free speech rights. It protects all of our free speech rights, and we should be able to do that.
So this is an interesting point. You're not. I think we just have to keep on underscoring this. You're not prescribing. There's no policy prescriptive here.
Exactly.
This is the Supreme Court took the ability to determine that policy away from American citizens, and you would just like that given back to American citizens.
Exactly right.
And what you do with that right is up to American citizens, who might actually make good or bad decisions in various places at various times.
It sounds kind of like democracy, right?
Right, yeah.
but the bad would be back to within reason.
Right.
Good or bad, but it still would have a cap.
Or fixable, or changeable. Yeah, excellent, thank you.
We have a young lady up here.
Thank you for calling me young, Larry. Hi, my name's Jennifer Rice. My question is a little off topic, but first of all, I want to say, to use a movie reference, you guys had me at hello. Like the concept of this makes a ton of sense, I think, to a lot of people in this room, and it sounds like you're generating a groundswell. For me, as an American woman, it's hard for me to talk about amendments and not think about the ERA. So I'm sensing from you, Jeff, that we have a history of maybe cracking the door to amendments. It sounds like they tend to be passed in groups, and maybe it's just normalizing the concept. So I'm wondering if you can talk about that a little bit.
Well, I mean, a good friend of American Promise is Gloria Steinem, so we have benefited greatly from her stories of what went wrong and what exactly happened to the ERA right at that very, very important moment, which we're on track in a totally different way, but also, it's still, it's a possibility that if we had a cluster that it's very, do you think it's overdue? I don't know.
Yeah, so we did talk to Gloria Steinem, thanks to Deborah, about and we talked to the people who won the 26th Amendment, which lowered the voting age to 18. So we talked to, there are people, maybe some in this room, who voted for amendments, who are with us and can give us advice, and we talked to them. And the one thing Gloria said that she would have done differently is go to the states more and earlier, because we got it out of Congress and we had a great run, but then we weren't ready in some of the last states we needed to ratify. And you need 38 states to ratify an amendment. And the ERA, Equal Rights Amendment, ran out at a gas at about 35, I think. And so because the opposition then grew and they weren't ready in the states. So that's why we take it to the people in the states all the time, not just because it's the right thing to do, but it's the right strategy. And again, I think ERA, just working for it, helped change the world in a lot of ways too. It brought the debate to the country, and so I don't think we ever go wrong by trying, and we go wrong when we don't try.
And maybe the part that we understand really, really is that just going to a state, these 22 states that we have poised to ratify, it's not enough. We have to keep those states warm while we go out and get the other states that we need. And so that when we come back, it's not like, what was that? I can't remember, so much fresh hell has happened since then. So yeah, there's a deeper understanding, I believe.
All right, well, we all leave with a sense of mission, and I appreciate that you've given us, and Larry and I both, and Roxanne are like, why do more people not know about this? Why are more people not fully involved?
Well,
in this?
one thing I could say to everyone in this room is if you go to AmericanPromise.net and sign the pledge, the Citizens Pledge, that's a great first step for us, because that's the groundswell that you speak of, and that will bring you to our website so you can read more. But
We can do from this room is to work on the state Senate.
Yeah, absolutely. And so go sign up at the Citizen Pledge first, because that way you'll be able to be reached by our great Pennsylvania team who are in the room. Raise your hand if you want. You won't see them. They're in the dark, but they're over there. And if you can find them in person and talk to them about getting Pennsylvania to be state number 23 at the reception later on. But sign up at the website so they can follow up with you. You'll be whatever you want to do to help.
We'll take it.
We'll take it.
So let's make that a challenge here, right? We're going to be 23, okay? And who else is in the running for 23?
Wyoming,
We're going to
Wisconsin.
kick Wyoming's ass.
Wyoming's going to be 23 and me. All right, well, thank you for this. We are definitely all a lot smarter as a result of it. My gratitude to both of you for being here.
Thank you, Alec.
Thank you so much for having us.